My name is Antonia Brooks. I'm 71 years old, and on that ordinary Tuesday morning in the doctor's waiting room, my entire world shifted. My phone rang. It was my only daughter, Angela. Her voice sounded cold, distant, almost mechanical. "Mom, we're going on a trip to Europe tomorrow. I already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye." Just like that. 45 years of raising her, sacrificing everything for her happiness, and she discarded me like yesterday's garbage. But I took a deep breath and smiled, because there was something my dear daughter didn't know. I had become a widow 6 months earlier. My husband, Robert, passed away from a heart attack while we were eating breakfast together, just as we had done every morning for 45 years. That morning, he had served me coffee with cream and kissed my forehead, saying, "Good morning, my love." Those were his last words to me. Since Robert's death, Angela had seemed more present in my life. She visited 3 times a week, helped with funeral arrangements, accompanied me to the grocery store. She even suggested I see a doctor for a checkup. "Mom, you need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say with that smile I thought was love. Now I understood it was merely convenience. The beach house had been our sanctuary. Robert and I bought it when Angela was 15, through years of hard work and sacrifice. Every summer we'd go there, building memories, celebrating birthdays and Christmases. Angela would bring boyfriends, and later her husband, Edward. I cooked, cleaned, and did laundry for everyone. It was our family tradition. I never imagined she'd see it as just money. And the car? That old Ford pickup truck Robert cared for like his own child. He'd wash it every Sunday, change the oil religiously, park it in the same shaded spot. Angela knew what that truck meant to me. Robert's scent still lingered on the seats. When she hung up, I stayed on that uncomfortable green plastic chair surrounded by other sick people. For the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something strange happened inside me, a calm I hadn't felt since Robert's death, because in that moment, I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before he died, Robert had handed me a manila envelope. "Antonia, put this in your dresser drawer. If something happens to me, open it after a while, but only when you feel ready." I had stored it away without much thought. After the funeral, with overwhelming grief and countless arrangements, I simply forgot about it. But there it was, waiting for me at home. The doctor examined me and declared I was in good health for my age. I just needed rest and better nutrition. I nodded and smiled. But my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about that envelope, about the coldness in Angela's voice, and how Edward was probably behind everything. He had never liked me, always viewing me as a nuisance. I left the office and walked slowly to the bus stop. I no longer had a car, according to Angela. But as I waited, I couldn't help but smile. There was something poetic about this situation. My daughter thought she had left me with nothing. But what she didn't know was that Robert, my dear Robert, had always been a man who planned ahead. The bus arrived, and I sat by the window, watching the city pass by. Houses, stores, people rushing everywhere, all with their own tragedies and secrets. I had my own secrets too, and I was about to discover them. When I got home, I went straight to my bedroom and opened the dresser drawer. The manila envelope was exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. Robert had written my name on the front in his neat handwriting. I sat on the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep breath. It was getting dark outside, and familiar shadows filled the house, shadows that no longer scared me. I opened the envelope slowly, as if unwrapping a birthday gift. What I found inside took my breath away. There were legal documents, property deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Robert. My eyes filled with tears as I read his familiar handwriting. "My dear Antonia, If you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I wanted to protect you from worries. Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just have the beach house. We have 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Angela and Edward live. We also have shares in 3 companies worth more than you can imagine. You are rich, my love. You always were rich, but now you are on paper, too. My hands trembled as I examined the documents. There were deeds to houses in different city neighborhoods, a downtown condo, a small coastal motel, and indeed the 20-story apartment building where my daughter lived. Robert had been the silent owner for the past 10 years, but had placed everything in the name of a company I didn't know about. According to the papers, I was the sole heir of that company. There were also bank statements for accounts I never knew existed, with numbers that seemed unreal. Robert had been a bus driver for 40 years, but apparently he had also been a brilliant investor. Every penny we saved, every sacrifice we made, he had multiplied in silence. In the letter, Robert explained that he had kept it all secret because he didn't want me to worry about money or for Angela to know our real financial situation. You know our daughter, Antonia. If she knew we had so much money, her attitude would change. I want her to love us for who we are, not what we have. What bitter irony! Our daughter had abandoned us thinking we had nothing, when in reality, we had everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around the house, touching old furniture and knickknacks Angela always criticized as outdated. I looked at family photos on the wall, especially the one where she was 5 years old, sitting on Robert's lap and laughing. Where did that sweet little girl go? When did she become so cold, so calculating? The next morning, the phone rang again. It was Angela, her voice different, softer, but I had learned to be wary of those shifts in tone. Mom, how are you? I wanted to tell you we already transferred the money from the house and car. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it'll help you live for a few months while you look for something smaller. My share? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Yes, Mom. We obviously weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That's fair, right? We need the money for our investment in Europe. Edward has an incredible business opportunity there. 30% of my own things. How generous. I see. When do you leave, honey? This afternoon. Our bags are already packed. We'll be gone for at least 6 months, maybe more if the business goes well. But don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment. Something that fits your needs. Fits my needs. As if she knew what my needs were. Okay, Angela. Have a safe trip. Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you so much. And she hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand. For the first time in months, I laughed, really laughed, like I hadn't since Robert died. The situation was so absurd, it was comical. My daughter had robbed me, kicked me out of my own house, spoken to me with unbearable condescension, all to fund a European adventure that would probably be a disaster. But what bothered me most wasn't the money. It was the ease with which she had discarded me. 45 years of my life dedicated to her, of sacrifice, of unconditional love, and she had erased me from her life with a 2-minute phone call. That was what truly hurt. I checked my bank account online. Sure enough, they had deposited an amount that probably seemed generous to them, but to me was a mockery. They had sold the beach house for much less than its worth, likely needing cash quickly, and sold Robert's truck for a pittance. That afternoon, from my window, I watched Angela and Edward load suitcases into a cab. They looked like excited teenagers heading for an adventure. They never looked toward my window, never said goodbye. When the cab drove away, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and Robert's documents spread on the table. I had to make some decisions. I could call in a lawyer, reclaim my properties, get back everything they had taken. But something told me there was a better way. a more educational way. I called Mr. Peterson, the lawyer who had handled Robert's affairs. He had been at the funeral and told me to call if I ever needed anything. Well, now I needed him. Mrs. Brooks, it's good to hear from you. How are you? I'm well, Mr. Peterson. I need to see you urgently. I found some documents from Robert that I don't quite understand. Of course, you can come to my office tomorrow morning. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. I dreamed of Robert sitting in his favorite chair reading the newspaper. When he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time, my love. It's about time you stood up for yourself." I woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't happiness, but it wasn't the sadness I had felt for months either. It was determination. For the first time since Robert's death, I had a clear purpose. The following weeks were the strangest of my life. Officially, I was a poor widow, abandoned by her daughter, but in secret, I was a wealthy woman silently orchestrating the recovery of my assets. Mr. Peterson worked efficiently, calling every few days with updates. I decided to stay in my house. It was mine, after all, though Angela probably expected me to move into a single room. Every morning, I'd wake up, have breakfast at the same table where Robert and I had shared so many years, then go for walks in the neighborhood. Neighbors greeted me with that mix of pity and curiosity reserved for recent widows. Aurora, my lifelong neighbor, approached me one afternoon while I watered the plants. "Antonia, dear, is it true that Angela went to Europe and left you all alone?" "Yes, Aurora, she went with Edward. They have business plans there." "And how are you going to live, sweetie? We all know Robert didn't leave much money." If you only knew, I thought. Don't worry, Aurora. I'll be fine. These conversations repeated constantly. The butcher, the baker, the corner store lady. Everyone spoke with that soft tone they use with the unfortunate. I would nod, smile, and thank them for their concern. But inside, part of me enjoyed this performance. It was like living a double life. Mr. Peterson called one Wednesday morning. "Mrs. Brooks, I have good news. I was able to nullify the sale of the beach house. The buyers didn't know the sale was fraudulent, so they got their money back without problems. The house is yours again." "Excellent, Mr. Peterson. And the building where Angela lives?" "That's more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through the company, but we need administrative changes for direct control. That should take another 2 weeks." "Perfect. Keep me informed." After hanging up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee thinking about Angela. She had been in Europe for 3 weeks without any contact. No call, no message, not even a postcard. To her, I had ceased to exist the moment she got the money she needed. But I knew that would change soon. Angela arrived back in the country 3 months later, alone and broken. Edward had abandoned her in Europe, running off with another woman. All his business promises had been lies. He was just escaping debts he had accumulated, using their apartment as collateral, not knowing I was the real owner. When she called me, desperate and crying, asking if she could come home, I said yes. Of course I did. She was my daughter. But this time, things would be different. I let her move back into her childhood bedroom. I watched her struggle with finding work, dealing with Edward's debts, and facing the consequences of her choices. She took a night job cleaning offices. The same daughter who had once lived in luxury. Every night I saw her come home exhausted, and every night my heart broke a little. But I didn't rescue her. Not yet. Mr. Peterson investigated Edward's debts and found evidence of fraud, forged signatures, and documents. We could free Angela from all legal responsibility, but I waited. I waited until I saw genuine change in her, not just desperation,
Over the following weeks, I watched Angela transform. She became humble, grateful, hardworking. She started helping other women in similar situations, using her own meager earnings to assist a coworker with childcare costs. She talked about going back to school to study social work, wanting to help women leaving abusive situations. One evening, she said to me, "Mom, these past months have been the hardest of my life, but also the most important. I finally understand what really matters. It's not money or luxury. It's having people who genuinely love you, who are there when everything falls apart." That's when I knew it was time. I arranged a meeting with Mr. Peterson and asked Angela to come along. She was nervous, worried about legal fees she couldn't afford. When we arrived at his office, Mr. Peterson handed her folders of documents. The first folder showed evidence that Edward had forged her signature, that she wasn't responsible for his debts. The second folder contained property deeds, bank statements, investment certificates, the entire fortune Robert had built. Angela read in silence, her face cycling through confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally comprehension. "Mom, this says you're the owner of the building where I lived." "Yes." "You have other properties, bank accounts, investments?" "Yes." "You knew all this when I came back from Europe asking for help?" "Yes." "Why, Mom? Why did you let me suffer when you could have helped me?" I took a deep breath. "Because you needed to learn something you couldn't learn any other way. You needed to learn the value of what you had lost: family, respect, responsibility. When you abandoned me, you didn't just take money. You took dignity, love, and trust." Angela started crying, but these weren't tears of self-pity. They were tears of deep understanding. "I abandoned you when you needed me most. Yes. I treated you like garbage. Yes. And you saved me anyway. Yes, but not by giving you money so you could keep making the same mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit bottom so you could learn to save yourself." We left Mr. Peterson's office with a completely new relationship. We were no longer mother and daughter united by obligation or need. We were two women who had consciously chosen to build a life together based on love, respect, and a common purpose. Even though Angela now knew I had resources to solve all her problems, she kept her cleaning job. She said, "I need to finish what I started, Mom. I can't just go back to a comfortable life as if nothing happened." She continued her education, paid for with her own savings. She worked with women in crisis situations, using her experience to help others. And she proposed that we turn the beach house into a temporary shelter for women leaving domestic violence. "The best sanctuaries are the ones that are shared," I told her. "Your father always said a house isn't truly a home until it opens its doors to people who need love." 6 months later, our foundation was helping dozens of women rebuild their lives. Angela had completed her social work degree and was accepted into a master's program. She had found dignity not in material possessions, but in honest work and genuine relationships. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Angela said to me, "Mom, I received a letter from Edward. He's in prison in France, asking for forgiveness. How do you feel about it?" "I don't feel anything. No anger, no sadness, no desire for revenge. That Angela that married him no longer exists." That night, after Angela went to study, I sat alone looking at the stars. Robert used to say stars were souls of people who lived full lives, watching over their families from the sky. "Thank you, my love," I said to the sky. "Thank you for taking care of me even after your death." Justice had arrived not as revenge, but as education. Not as punishment, but as transformation. And in the end, we had both gained something much more valuable than money. We had gained an authentic relationship built on a foundation that no future crisis could destroy.